Hello everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do an in-depth sniff review of the HomeWorx by Slatkin & Co. Apricot Cobbler 18-ounce 4-wick candle. As you can see here, I've done a couple of burns on this. Perfect color there, kind of matching my shirt almost. Just a creamy, you could call it a tan, a taupe, a camel, but not an orange, in my opinion, wax. And this, I purchased this with the recent sale at HomeWorx.shop, kind of the round 2 purchase that I made about a week or two ago in mid-March. Though I believe this is a returning scent. I think there were a lot of folks saying they were happy to see it back from a year or two ago. This was my first time purchasing it, and it was from the recent release on the HomeWorx.shop site. So we'll talk about the notes here. I did burn this a handful of times, so I'll also talk about the scent throw, the performance, but I want to get a little deep into also the star of the show, of course, always for me, is just what is the scent, what is the blend. Performance matters, all of that stuff matters. That's why we're spending good money on, you know, wax here. But the most intriguing part is unpacking the notes, the scent, understanding it, and then hopefully, you know, you're gonna get the performance that you're expecting from it as well. But that's not an afterthought for me, but it's not as exciting, if that makes sense. But for review purposes, of course, that is super important and why I know many folks are here to hear about it. So, Apricot Cobbler, notes on this one are juicy apricot, pie crust, brown sugar, and vanilla cream. I have a bone to pick, however, with the naming of this scent and the notes of this scent. And that is, so Apricot Cobbler. So you can see here, that is an image of, I believe, a cobbler, or maybe an apricot crumble or an apricot crisp. Because though, you know, people, oh, what is, you know, a pie versus a crumble versus a crisp versus a cobbler, there really are very specific things in the world of baking. Those have specific definitions behind them. And the picture in here could be a cobbler, but the notes do not designate a cobbler, primarily because it says pie crust. Pie crust is not used in cobblers, period. Just doesn't come that way. So pie is, whether sweet or savory, always has a bottom crust. A cobbler doesn't. That's fine. That's not the primary difference. Primary difference is a cobbler is a baked fruit dessert without the bottom crust, and the top crust is a kind of biscuit dough versus your traditional pie dough. So essentially they are fruit topped with a biscuit topping. The biscuits are actually usually dropped into the fruit on small rounds, giving the appearance of a cobbled road, which is why they're called cobblers. So if you're using pie crust, that's not going to be a cobbled appearance, texture, flavor. So the fact that saying pie crust is in here, well, there's no crust on the bottom of a cobbler, and you wouldn't put pie dough on the top because you'd use biscuit, not pie dough, which is completely different form, build, everything. The similarities are that there's flour in it, but other than that, like how it bakes, the ingredients, the rise, it just is completely different. So that's, I think, just a little bit of a pet peeve, but also an annoyance in and for me, because like, if this is a cobbler, which is, you know, what the image is and what the name is, then it should be juicy apricot with, you know, biscuit topping. Or if they wanted to go towards like a crumble or a crisp is going to be a mixture of flour, sugar, butter, sometimes spices, sometimes nuts. A crumble, again, crumbled on top in those big chunks that are so delicious. A crisp typically has oats added to it because the oats crisp up, but there's a little bit of, you know, overlap between crumbles and crisps these days, but basically a streusel topping on top, which also is what this kind of looks like, even more than cobbler biscuits, but I'll give them a pass on that. But don't say there's pie crust in here, because there's not gonna be pie crust if it is a cobbler. If the scent matches the name and the imagery, say, you know, flour, toasted oats, butter, and crumble topping. Say that. That would be more accurate, if not going full on biscuit dough. But to say pie crust is just inaccurate, and I don't like inauthenticity or inaccuracies. That is my like perfectionism A-type personality coming through. I want accuracy and I want authenticity. And that is just more of like a laziness or a marketing to say pie crust, in my opinion. Or the name is wrong. Brown sugar and vanilla cream. Okay, so that's what we know going in. Also, what does apricot smell like? We all, you know, eat dried apricots and maybe eat fresh apricots. But I like to dig into what are the true differences, because I love apricots, especially in fragrance. So it's that fuzzy, soft fruit note. They say they have lactonic and animalic nuances or notes. So basically the lactonic is gonna be like a creamy or almost milky. The animalic is gonna be almost your sort of musky, which plenty of fruits get the kind of musky, animalic, animal scent to it. And when thinking of stone fruits, you've got your peaches that are super sweet, really bright, almost citrus-like acidity. Your cherries can be sour sweet. Your plums can bring a little bit of almost bitter notes to it. But apricots have really that good balance. They're sweet, or not too sweet, juicy, but not dripping. Not much in the way of sour or in the way of bitterness. Just really straightforward. But again, that little bit of almost creaminess, that lactonic note to it that is just so nice, either dried or fresh or baked or in, you know, body fragrance or any sort of fragrance, home fragrance. I'm into it. So I love the idea of apricot, certainly in a cobbler form. If it was pie, fine, but you don't see apricot pies as much. It usually is a cobbler, a crumble, a crisp, right? So anyhow, sniffing this, you know, this is one of those that I've only burned it twice and I did not burn it for excessive hours. I'm getting a little bit of a burnt smell to it. I'm getting a little bit of a waxy wick smell. And so I will say right off the bat, this is gonna be similar to the review I did on the Island Citrus Guava, which is the intensity of this on, you know, room temp sniff, pre-burn sniff, is very light. And the burn, the strength, the throw, the sillage is also very, very weak on this, which is disappointing because I know that HomeWorx is typically known in my book and many others, most people's books, as being 18 ounce, big diameter, 4 wicks, great burn, beautiful throw, open concept, big space. These aren't your layering scents, these aren't your powder room scents, these are your heavy hitter scents. And HomeWorx and Harry are very good at your gourmands, baked goods, back from the Slatkin & Co. Bath & Body Works era. Think of all of the amazing bakery scents, my favorite being apple crumble. So not far off from what I expected this to be or what it could have been in strength and authenticity and throw. So it's possible for, you know, some people think, oh, it's a baked item, it's not gonna be that strong. No, it can be. This is not, and it's a bummer because I know a lot of folks love this scent, so I don't know if it's just this time around, it's a lower intensity or something with the formulation of the wax that's not allowing it to, the fragrance oils to really shine. But I mean, I had this lit, and it wasn't a nose blind issue either. I had this lit in my open concept kitchen, and then I was on the front porch for a while having some wine for the first warm spring day of the year, and came back inside, and I could tell something was lit, and I could get a little hint of the stone fruit from the apricot, and that's it. I walk up right on it. Okay, it's kind of there, but it's not obvious. It's not acceptable, honestly, the strength of it. It's not just like, oh, I prefer my 8s and 9s and this is a 4 or 5. No, this is like a 2 or a 3, where it's like, honestly, not worth burning and kind of pointless to burn it, unfortunately. And I hate to say that. First of all, because I spent, you know, with shipping and, you know, even with the deals, like, I don't know, $22 or something on this. I don't want to throw money away. But even, like, honestly, without the lid, sniffing it straight, there's very little scent. And this isn't a my nose thing. Like, I have candles all over the place, sniff it, they're fine, they're strong. But if you gave this to me and didn't tell me what it was, I would call it like a creamy fruit. I wouldn't be able to pick it up. And I pride myself on having a pretty solid nose of being able to pick out scents. Now, the rim of the lid always captures the fragrances a little bit stronger sometimes. Or if you're having trouble sniffing here, you can get it here. And it is an authentic apricot. It certainly is apricot. It's not peach, it's not generic fruit, it is apricot, which I love. When it comes to the rest of the notes, it's hard to pick them out, but bakery, yes, but it's so weak that I couldn't tell you if it is pie crust, like they say in the bottom, and the name and label is not matching, or if the note of pie crust was just incorrect, and you know, biscuit or the crumbly sugar and a little bit of that vanilla cream and just the butter and the flour and the chunks of that streusel or crumble or crisp, hopefully with a little bit of oats. I don't get any of it. I can't even say if it's accurate because I don't really smell it. I smell, let's call it, you know, think back to the Bath & Body Works signature vanillas collection 10, 12 years ago. There was a vanilla apricot or apricot vanilla body care item. They're straightforward, you know, formulas of Bath & Body Works. And it was so nice because it was vanilla and apricot. That's what I get from this. That's all I can get from this. I think there's more there, but either the concentration of the oils was way too low, like end of the bucket, they didn't put a high enough percentage in here, or something with the wax formulation, I don't know. But I can't even like truly assess to review the accuracy or authenticity of what I'm sniffing here, which again, I don't want to rag on it, but it's disappointing and it shouldn't be that way. So, and it's not, I will say it's not typical for HomeWorx. You can look through the last couple of years of my reviews. Granted, I relaunched in late 2021, but I did have a few reviews in like 2017, 2018, post you know, HomeWorx's launch, and recently, of course, too. Like there's amazing scents with fantastic throw. Obviously, love the brand. Think Harry is, you know, a genius with fragrance and branding and marketing of home fragrance, but it's a bummer that this happens because I don't know how or why it happens. Because I know they test, and I know Harry tests. Obviously, it's not a one-man shop. It's a company. There are people in the labs and in the fragrance houses and in the factories doing quality testing. So I don't know where it falls apart or why, because it's random. It's not, you know, Yankee Candle, hard-pressed to find a many scented strong throwers there these days. Bath & Body Works, usually pretty strong, but performance and burn and quality of scent, kind of not so great. HomeWorx really has typically been that wonderful balance of good quality burn, not without issues, but they own them. They, you know, iterate and they correct them, which I can get on board with that, and I appreciate and respect that, both as a consumer and just, you know, as a business, how they operate. But usually it's going to be a good, strong scent to throw, an accurate whatever. And so when something like this happens, or like even the Island Citrus Guava, which is not as weak as this, like I'm going to call this like a 2.5, 3 here and 2.5, 3 burning for a long while. You can see great pull, really good burn, clean burn, like no sooting, didn't get much in the way of mushroom tops. I did a little tiny trim on there just to get the extra little poppers off. It did, once it cooled, this little cracking thing on the edge that I noticed also my berry trifle did every time I burned it. Once it cooled in a 70-degree home, it did a little crack on the edge there, which I don't know if that is a formulation thing or just happenstance, but didn't affect the berry trifle scent at all or the throw. And that's an example of, I would say, a scent that is somewhat light, but the throw is there. It is not an overpowering, berry trifle, not an overpowering scent. It travels well. You can still smell it. You can tell what you're smelling, but it's subtle and kind of luxurious because it's not just like knocking you over the head with some artificial berries. It's like really nice. That's what this could have been, and maybe that's what they were going for, that kind of intensity. Because sometimes if you get a really heavy gourmand or really heavy bakery, you know, it can knock you over the head, and you don't want it to come off inauthentic or cloying or cheap. But you also don't want it to come off a level 2 scent, because maybe I'll burn this again. I can try like the layering trick, but again, I like to layer scents if I think the 2 scents will be nice together. I don't want to have to layer scents as a way to get value out of burning a candle, just because I don't really smell it much otherwise. At that point, it's just not worth the time, energy, or effort. So I would love to hear from folks who burned Apricot Cobbler in the past. First of all, what you think, cobbler versus pie, the controversy of it all, and what you were getting from it. Because again, for me, apricot, a little bit of vanilla, that's just not enough for me to consume to be able to kind of give my 2 cents on it. So I want to know what you think of the scent, if you had it in the past, if you've purchased this latest launch. I don't like to get into like the codes and the batches and variation things, but for what it's worth, the bottom here is F 211, 218, which I said it in another video. I'm not sure what that means. My best guess is that the 21 is maybe 2021, 1218, maybe December 18th, but that's unconfirmed. That's literally pure conjecture on my part. If you've purchased any from HomeWorx.shop in the recent launch in March and received them and burned them, let me know what you think. Like, is it just me? Do you also think it's weak? Because it's a bummer. You don't see apricot forward scents very often, and I really love when they're around. And I had high hopes for this, especially knowing that HomeWorx and Harry can do the best bakeries that I've ever smelled before. And it's just a big bummer that this is not one of them. So let me know what you think. And until next time, take care.